Good morning and welcome to the January 15th version of the Chair's Breakfast. Nice of you to all show up this morning. Our usual practice is we'll start over here with the town moderator in a moment and zip around the table and then go back out and start with Sally and cut across the chairs. I just have a couple of quick announcements. A reminder that the town caucus is January 27th here in the townhouse at 7:30. And also in that same evening at 6 o'clock, the selectmen will meet. And at that meeting on the 27th, we will actually set the warrant for the 2020 town meeting. I can tell you that we had 52 warrant articles that were certified by the town clerk. And at our meeting on the 27th, the moderator will also join us, and we will not only set the warrant, but we'll try to figure out the order of the warrant articles. It's not complicated, but a little twist this year is because of the late nature of the annual meeting. It turns out our town meeting is the same time as Carlisle's town meeting. So in order for our school committee to represent themselves for their budgets, we'll do a little rearranging of the normal budget kinds of things. I think have the schools on Tuesday. Is that the plan? And so just a little bit of a complication. So without further ado, Madam Moderator.
Not much to add. We have 9 citizen petition articles this year. And our 5 hearings will commence at the end of February.
24th.
24th. The first one will be the select board's hearing. And we will be doing a further experiment with electronic voting this year to give people another chance to weigh in on what they think about it and how they would like to use it. And I think that is about it.
Thank you. Before we get to Mr. Crossley, I failed to mention that you should know, if you don't, that some terms of members of your committees will expire after town meeting. And it turns out that then there is a period of time where some committees actually don't even have a quorum to which they can meet. So you might look at your roster and find out who's going to be departing and begin that process of trying to find replacements for it. And turn to your liaison from the select board. We'll be more than happy to help you on that, but you might be able to avoid some of that if we get a little bit of an earlier start on replacing some of our members.
Yeah, I actually have one thing to add, which was the school committee was kind enough to accommodate my request to come to attend a PTG presidents meeting to begin a dialogue with the PTG presidents about how to do some outreach with the school-age children demographic, parents of school-age children demographic, to involve them more in town meeting and bring them more information about opportunities to serve on boards and committees and volunteer in other ways with the town. So I thank the school committee for that.
Your Honor.
Well, I'm John Kratzley, the chair of the Community Preservation Act Committee. We submitted our warrant article. There are 10 proposed to be funded projects. Some are town, some are other town entities, nonprofits, totaling $1.960000. So it's a good, healthy number, and some folks did not get funded. Many got funded what they asked, and some didn't get all they asked. It's pretty typical for a CPC year. One piece of good news is the legislature had enacted a distribution of the budget surplus that included $20 million for the CPC funding statewide. You may have watched in the paper that budget surplus distribution took a long time to unfold. But in the end, the CPC did get that 20 million. It doesn't affect this year, but it will be a significant addition. There's a bunch of projections about what it would mean for every city and town that's in the CPC program, but it certainly is a healthy addition, along with the increase that kicks in next year on the registry fee as well. So along with our local funding, with the increase in the registry fee and this very welcome 20 million, we should have even more money to work with next year.
Great, thank you very much.
Hi, Edward Larner, I'm the Vice Chair of the Housing Authority. Rick can't make it today. We just want to thank CPC. I understand they are approving our request for money for the Giroux House, the house that's going to go on next to the Giroux Park. And lots of work has been done by our planning department and other parts of the town government. We're a little bit outside of town government in the sense that we answer to the state Department of Housing and Community Development. So we're real pleased that the warrant items that were voted on last year are moving ahead. I know Mike Barrow is working on the home rule, work that has to be done in order to bring the last year's warrant items back to Concord for town meeting, and we hope next year. So,
Well, there's two of those. One is a building permit surcharge, and the second is a property tax transfer fee. And that is being bundled up in a statewide effort that would create a property tax transfer of 2% that the cities and towns would have some discretion over. So it's gotten a lot of support statewide, and our home rule petition might get supplanted by the state effort. That's good news rather than bad news, because there's a lot more momentum behind it. But so progress there indeed. Mike.
My name is Michael McAteer. I'm representing the Concord Climate Advisory Board. The board's deliberating on a plan. The plan's deliverable is in May. We're working with KLA consultants to pull it together. Several important pieces of the business that's been done is 2 engagement strategies to bring in the voice of the citizenry, what they see that would come out of this plan. One at the high school was completed, and then yesterday Concord Can was held, and a number of people came in there. And as far as all of you that could help, there is a website, and if you, from your perspectives, have ideas or innovation or areas that we really should concentrate on, we welcome you to go into that. I would also say it may be a whole lot easier just to send it to me at mlmcAteer@gmail.com, and I can, run it through the rest of the board. So that's where we are now.
Thanks, Mike. Court?
Court Booth, representing the Concord School Committee this morning. A couple of things. We had I think, very good session last night at the Sanborn School in regard to the new middle school project. Had about 50 to 60 people, I think. And I wouldn't necessarily call it a blue sky session, but we heard from everybody about everything in terms of wants, needs, and concerns. And there'll be another one of those sessions February 27. And there was quite an appeal for community sessions for specific topics. Could we meet and just talk sustainability? Could we meet and just talk security? Could we meet and just talk 21st century education? So how soon those smaller, more focused groups will happen, I don't know. The building committee meets again tomorrow morning at 7:30, and we'll pick up from where we left off in December. In terms of budget, you know that we strive to come in very, very close to guideline for next year's budget. That proposal is on the table. This year's budget is being managed effectively. We expect a mid-year report very soon, but we're comfortable that we're in line. We're keeping an eye on the superintendent's leadership around social emotional learning and cultural competency, 2 of our strategic plan objectives. So there's a lot happening in those arenas. The policy folks on the school committee have updated a number of policies. We want to be current on vaping because that's a problem here as it is elsewhere. And we're looking at new and more specific policies around gender identity and hate, two areas that need more focus, more guideline, if you will. And we were pleased to see the Concord Association of Music Parents get underway, a very strong and supportive group for what's already a very strong music program in our schools. So this is a nonprofit in town that's very, very active, trying to support and augment what's happening around support for music education. And finally, and Wally, you may have more on this, but finally, we're looking at the Alcott school being at capacity, the Willard not being at capacity, and that might bring us to redirecting Muse students, incoming brand new Muse students that don't have Alcott peers, Alcott siblings, and they might begin to go to the Alcott, but that's not formalized yet. I'm sorry, to Willard, thank you, to Willard, yeah.
Thank you, Court. Matt?
Matt Johnson, Planning Board. At our last meeting, we looked at a couple of new applications. One, to increase the amount of parking at the service station at the corner of Thoreau Street and Sudbury Road, just for service patrons there. Second, a new performance barn at Neshoba Brook School. And both of those we have heard the discussion, and we've continued to render a decision on our next meeting, but we're favorable on those, it looks like. And then we completed our deliberations on the Main Street PRD and came to a unanimous decision to recommend the development with 3 changes. And those 3 changes were to move some of the units forward at the back to create more of a contiguous wildlife corridor. Essentially that, because the common open space back there right now would be otherwise isolated and really wouldn't serve any of the purposes in the PRD bylaw. And then secondly, to require all electric infrastructure, so heating, cooling, appliances. And thirdly, to further consolidate a couple of the units, because over time, the proportion of the units became more single family, taking up a lot more of the surface area of the site, and perhaps to reduce the number of garages. So those 3 provisos, with those 3 provisos in place, the board was in consensus that this is something that we could recommend. That's now before the ZBA for its further special permit granting. As far as our warrant contributions, believe it or not, 52 is lower than the number you would have otherwise gotten, because we decided not to move forward with 2 of the warrant articles that we had been considering. One involved reducing the potential to create extra tall walls and fences. The problem with that one was just to come up with language that dealt with exceptions and circumstances that were site-specific. So that'll just get further scrutiny by the building commissioner. And then the second one was a proposal brought to us by the West Concord Advisory Committee to allow grocery store use in the industrial district. And we had a very large turnout when we were looking at that article in our meeting. And I think about a dozen people spoke against it, from West Concord businesses as well as residents, and no one spoke for it. And it seemed like maybe a little more outreach was warranted before we put that on the warrant. So we thought we'll put that off. So.
Good. Thank you, Matt. Mary?
My name is Mary Hartman. I'm the Vice Chair of the Finance Committee. The Finance Committee issued its final guideline in December. The guideline is 3.14% overall. That breaks out to about 2.5 for the town, about 3.3 for CPS, and the high school gets 3.75, mainly because of the enrollment shift in the high school. Concord has a larger portion of students now than they did in the past. So the guideline spending only covers about 77% of total spending. So if we add in the rest of the spending and we make some assumptions, right now the projection is a 2.8% property tax increase for FY21.
And you're meeting this Thursday as well?
We're meeting tonight, actually. No, tomorrow night.
Thursday. Good, thank you. Keith?
Keith Bergman, Chair of the Affordable Housing Trust Study Committee. We've met again with the Select Board to review the bylaw. After we had a chance to see Town Council's comments, we accepted all the textual changes. There were some questions about whether we wanted to reconsider bringing property approvals back to the Select Board for a 2/3 vote. We really do want the Select Board to be part of that process, so we kept that in. To follow up the question that was raised at this last meeting, Town Council did clarify that there is no charter provision that would preclude a Select Board member as a Select Board serving in that capacity from also serving on another town board. That they, since we had drafted a bylaw which requires one of the members of the Board of Trustees to be a member of the Select Board, and the charter would not prohibit that.
We also have administrative policy number 10, I think, that specifically deals with members of the Select Board. As you said, they can serve not in their personal capacity, but as representatives from the Select Board.
Right. Thanks.
I'm Doug Bacon, and I'm on the board of the Concord Housing Development Corporation. We're pleased to have completed the acquisition of 930 Main Street at the end of last year in conjunction with the Concord Housing Foundation and the Concord Housing Authority and Habitat for Humanity. Permitting will occur in 20, with hopefully occupancy in 21 for this. We're just starting our semi-annual small grants program to Concord residents who can use financial assistance in improving their houses for safety purposes primarily. And we met this week with the representatives from Junction Village, the Grantham Group, which is the 12-acre site being developed behind the prison for affordable assisted living, and just to continue our support for them and to hear where they are. They need state funding. They've been turned down twice, and they hope to get it this summer.
Thanks, Doug. Molly?
So at the, well, first of all, I want to thank Carmen for coming to talk to the PTG parents. We are always trying to get them to think about more participation from the members at town meeting and more nights. And I think that's hopefully going to have some effect over time. And we also thank you for moving our articles in Concord to Tuesday. It's hard to be in two places at once, even in the 21st century. We too have put our budget in for the region, which came in originally a little below guideline. That's been matched now by FinCom. We have an article in the warrant for parking at the high school. You may remember last year we had a warrant for repaving and finishing the road from Thoreau to Walden. We've taken that off. It was a combined article to focus just on the parking this year. There'll be some meetings around that for public participation. And we are looking at some things, additional sustainability actions around both the parking lot itself and some of the things we might do around the high school. We did receive a grant from the VW settlement, diesel settlement, for an electric bus, which we had factored into the budget, so that's exciting. We'll have another bus. It'll take a year to get it because that's the time frame that orders are taking. we may have an opportunity to do a couple more. We're working on that. And underway on contract negotiation with the high school union. And toward the end of that, we will renegotiate or negotiate again the tail end of the CTA contract, which we did the bulk of last year, but saved the money for this year. We're trying to get both contracts to come up at the same time, which is a lot of work for the administration and the school committee, but we think is better from the standpoint of being able to negotiate effectively, because we are talking about the same things in the same year at the same time. We have a lunchtime meeting tomorrow. If you're thinking of coming, all we're gonna do is, in the public session, is create a subcommittee for working on that parking piece. And then we're gonna go into executive session and not to return. So it'll be a 5 or 10 minute meeting probably, and maybe 20. So gauge accordingly. And I think that's probably it. I think just to add, one of the things that's going on right now in the schools is the educational visioning piece for the middle school, which is exciting for us and, includes many, many people inside the schools between the administration and the teachers. All of what comes out of that will obviously funnel through the building committee and out for public discussion. So we thank the building committee who gets up at the crack of dawn to go to meetings and is doing yeoman's work. And I'm sure Court feels like he currently has a full-time job.
Thanks, Polly. Sarah?
So my name's Sarah Grimwood. I chair the Pollinator Health Advisory Committee. So I have 2 updates this month. One is that we have submitted an article to town meeting, and this is to determine whether the town will ensure that any new leases or license agreements allocated by the town for agricultural or retail use will prohibit the use of neonicotinoids. And we're really hoping that this will help to educate the town on, or the community on neonicotinoids and how to avoid them in your own yards, as well as bringing forward this article. And the second update is that we have sent out a letter to 27 local vendors of plants, so nurseries and farm stands and such like, to ask them, it's really a survey on whether they actually sell plants without the use of neonicotinoids, so that people can make an educated choice whether they want to buy plants with neonics or not. And so vendors have been returning their forms, so we're going to put on our committee website a list of the pollinator approved sites that have plants for sale, which are either clearly labeled, they may sell with neonics and without, but clearly labeled non-neonic plants, so that people who are concerned about that can knowingly buy pollinator approved plants.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Carol Ann Hannon. I'm the chair of the Council on Aging Board, and we have a couple of initiatives starting up. Ginger Quarles, the director, is starting a patient navigator program where they will train volunteers to help seniors navigate doctor's appointments. They'll go with them, they'll take notes, they'll do follow-up, and they'll interact with family members just to make sure that the care is proper, because sometimes people are overwhelmed when they have health issues. They're starting up tax preparation next month. I think February 11th. They go until the beginning of April. So anyone who wants assistance with tax preparation, they can go to the Council on Aging and schedule a time. In December, the National Charity League created greens arrangements for seniors who are homebound, which was a nice thing to do. And the Council on Aging has restarted their public policy discussion group, which has a lot of really enthusiastic people, apparently. They really enjoy that group. And that's about it.
Caroline, is it volunteers that help with the tax preparation and
Yes.
the navigators?
Yes, it's all volunteer.
That's great. Gary?
Yeah, Gary Kleiman, even I, as chair, have trouble with the name. It's the Nuclear Metals Inc. Starmet Corp. Reuse Planning Committee. So 46-acre site on the border with Maynard and Acton, next to the Thoreau Club in Limited Business District Number 2. This site has had a Department of Justice consent decree and record of decision now specifying what the cleanup will be for the site. Our committee is trying to help the town figure out what potential reuse would look like, what redevelopment could look like that would benefit the town if the town were to take ownership of this parcel of land after the cleanup is complete or during the cleanup process. We have a meeting actually at 10 a.m. today at the site just to get an update on what the remedial design phase looks like. And our committee has had an open forum in October where we took public input on potential uses and concerns, and we are now in the process of putting together, we have developed as a committee sort of a master plan that involves roughly half of the parcel remaining as open space and habitat preservation with some trails around it, and roughly half of the space with sort of a giant ring road design with more intensive development inside the ring road and some 2 or 3 potential development parcels on the outside, on the eastern side. And that master plan concept, we're now in the process of putting together 2 or 3 specific options that fits within that master plan that we can come out over the summer, do some more public outreach in the spring, and then over the summer do due diligence on that so that we can make a firm recommendation to the select board around the fall.
Thank you. Yeah, we need to set the date for when.
Yeah, February 10th, I believe, we're coming to speak with you, and I guess I need to get back to you as to how much time we need on the agenda.
Thank you. Sally?
I'm Sally Clutter and the chair of the Hugh Cargill Trust Committee. As you know, we have 5 funds that we oversee, and these funds actually support people who are in temporary financial need. And they call the Hugh Cargill line and we respond to them as best we can. One of our funds, the Silent Fund, provided holiday gift money. That particular process went by very well this December. There were no hiccups. We are actually in the process of assisting our clients who apply for property tax relief. This happens every quarter. Our new process of having them apply annually is going along very well. It has reduced a lot of the paperwork that was becoming very, very cumbersome. So we'll see how it works this quarter. We're thankful to the trustees of donations for working out a formula that actually is very consistent and keeps our funds very viable. This was a concern for us because it was sort of random every year, but now we can depend upon an infusion that will keep us fairly solid. I did want to alert all of you that we had an interesting experience over the holiday season. The Sudbury police actually apprehended 2 people, a couple from New Hampshire, who were approaching religious and charity foundations under false pretenses. And they actually did receive monies from these agencies, and through some diligence and whatever, they were apprehended, but it got us to be, actually one of them called the Hugh Cargill line. We were not in a position where we did give them money, so I don't know whether it was because they were apprehended, but their story was very heartfelt, and they went to the community chest, they went to community services here in town, they went to a couple of churches, and it was somewhat of a professional organization. So it isn't just telephone scams, it's sometimes people are very bold and aggressive, so we are concerned and we're really on the lookout now. Although a lot of our clients are repeat, they go in and out of financial situations that require assistance from time to time. So anyway, that's our report.
And in fact, they did get some money from
They
local
did.
organizations in town too, so. Yes. Hi.
Ellen Quackenbush of the Chair of Personnel Board. So at our last meeting, as Mike knows, we took an action, made a recommendation that probably should have been done years ago, which is to recommend to town meeting 2020 an article to modify or rescind the Personnel Board bylaw and basically dissolve the Personnel Board. So I'm probably the first chair to come before town meeting and dissolve our own board. But to give you some history, the Personnel Board was first set up in the 50s when we had an administrative form of government and there wasn't an HR department at all, and the Personnel Board handled all kind of employee issues. Fast forward to today, and the Personnel Board, or other employees, 45% are unionized, and the Personnel Board deals with the 55% that are not. And changes in the complexity of the jobs and job descriptions in town, a lot of enterprise funds, we have a broadband business, we have the Beatty Center. There's just a lot of complexity. There is more unionization, as you all know, the library unionized. And so the changes and demands on the HR director have been a lot of regulations changing at the state level, pay equity, minimum wage. So what happens, and I will be honest about this, is that Amy Foley presents a board packet, and all we really do is approve it. I don't think in the time I've been on the Personnel Board, which is maybe 5 years, we've made any substantive recommendation to change Amy's recommendations to us. So that's kind of like, is that the best use of Amy's time? And then once she makes a recommendation to us, this is in classification and compensation. So what class is a job in and what's their compensation? It goes to town meeting. So it's two entities, Amy, it's also town manager and town meeting that are involved in a process that maybe is past its prime and that it should be sunsetted. So we're working on a warrant article. The status of it right now is Amy is working with town council to be sure that in fact it is only a bylaw change, that there's no charter change required. If there were a charter change, this could be done in town meeting 2020. Next steps beyond making sure the warrant article is solid is communication plan. You know, communicate to employees that they will still have protections under the town charter, communication to town meeting members that, I guess to say it bluntly, this is not abdicating the role of a board to take care of town employees. It's more updating the responsiveness and flexibility of the HR director and the town manager to meet the needs of the 21st century employees. And just add one more thing that Stephen came up with a great idea, which was we've got two members of the Personnel Board who actually are former VPs of HR or current HR executives, to take those board members and other people who might want to volunteer and to do a special task force on what is the workforce in 2030 with the focus of what sorts of non-compensation remunerations would attract and retain employees in the 21st century. And they can include flex time. We all know how bad the traffic is. Maybe work at home and other opportunities to advance somebody's skills that really aren't just pay.
Right, thanks.
I actually wanted to jump in for a second and say that I forgot a announcement in the planning board report, which was that we will have a public forum on February 11th about the Thoreau Depot mixed-use redevelopment plan that's currently under construction by the MAPC. So just put that on your calendars. Thank you.
Good, thank you, Matt, and thank you, Ellen.
Hi, Happy Guzzard from the Ag Committee. Our news is that on March 24th will be our spring forum, and we believe the title will be What's Growing in Concord. And look back to 10 years ago when a program of recording and talking to farmers was done. And that's about it.
Great, thank you. Deb?
Good morning.
I'm Dr. Deborah Green, Chair of the Board of Health. I don't have too much to report as we have not met since our last Chair's breakfast. So the Board of Health will meet next Tuesday at 7 p.m. On January 21st, and we will continue to deliberate our proposed tobacco regulations. We've had 2 public hearings in November and December. We closed the public hearings. We will be discussing and deliberating comments and evidence that we've gathered. We've asked town council to come to that meeting. We are seeking guidance from town council regarding the state's changes in tobacco regulations and comparing them to what we've proposed and what gaps there are and how we might just try to close the gaps or amend our regulations. So for those of you who haven't been here in a month or so, the Board of Health is proposing to basically do 2 things. Our proposed regulations would ban all flavors of tobacco, both e-cigarette and combustible tobacco, and then move the sales of all products to 21+ stores, of which Concord does not have any. So there was a lot of public comments, about half and half for and against, and so we will continue to talk about it.
Deb, do you know if we're required, Matt, this might be something for you, if you go ahead with 21 only stores, we have none in Concord, and do we have any regulations about what they would have to be like or do?
I think that's already been established and defined.
In town?
I think in terms of the state.
State level?
Yeah, there's this.
So no local?
Well, actually, I think towns would need to define a district in which those establishments could be.
I think so.
Yeah.
You might.
And I don't think that Concord has designated such a district.
It would have to be defined as a use in the zoning bylaw.
Right, in the zoning bylaw.
We have zoning districts already, but if that use is not specified.
Right, but typically it's done as an overlay or some independent geography.
But you don't think that that existing use could be?
It could potentially be added to an existing, yeah, but we'd have to define the use.
I'm saying, do you think it has to be added, or there must be some zoning district that we have now where they could move by default unless we act to restrict it?
I actually don't think, I mean, it would be the underlying use, the business district use, so they would just go in those areas. There's no, right now, we don't have any explicit, geographic restrictions other than the basic use for the site.
I guess my point is
I assume now they could go anywhere.
Anywhere that a business use would be allowed.
My point is, I guess, that if the Board of Health is going to move forward with this kind of regulation, it might behoove you folks to start thinking about where.
If we wanted to restrict it to just one part of town. I don't know that that's the main concern. I think it's restricting, the access of people within the business itself, which is, I think, more the state concern.
Okay. Jean, morning.
Good morning, Jean Goldsberry from the Commission on Disabilities. We are starting to discuss the census and ways to ensure that people with disabilities understand and respond to the census. I'm going to be taking part in the League of Women Voters session that's coming up on the 26th to find out more about what they're suggesting around that. There are several other places that have good information about the census. We're also continuing our discussions about our concern of the parking at the new library addition. The parking does meet the requirements under the ADA, but we're just concerned about it not being as safe as members of the commission would like to see it, and trying to see if there's a way to make something better that could be off-street. We're working on developing some connections with the CPAC group, which is certainly an obvious connection for us. And at our last meeting, we voted to support an architectural access board variance for some renovations at the barn that housed the School of Philosophy up at Orchard House. It's been tied up for about 10 years now, and we feel like they've done a good job on design. Access into that building is only restricted about an inch off of what the ADA requires, and Orchard House has some alternative options for people who cannot make it through the doorway that's an inch too narrow.
My goodness. Judy?
Hi, I'm Judy Zombrecker, sitting in for Greg Higgins, who's chair of the Natural Resources Commission. The only thing that report on for the group is the Trails Committee sent to us a proposed off-road bicycle rider policy. So it's based upon guidelines that have been put out by the International Mountain Biking Association. So we've discussed that, and we're looking and we're open to any interested biking groups to come and provide us input on the proposed guidelines. I think is how we're probably more looking at it, and also what they foresee as potential use of bikes on town lands. Jane also mentioned, I think there's going to be a committee set up in the select board around bike usage.
Well, the biking group came to talk to us, and at our meeting on Monday, Jane showed us a draft of a transportation committee in which the bicycle interests would be associated.
Yeah.
But
So we want to connect with that and make
Yeah.
sure this is all consistent across the board.
Right, thank you.
I am Alicia Hesse Cleary, and I am a member of the Concord Cultural Council, which gives grants to the local art organizations. And I'm here to report that we met on October 2nd, the 23rd, November 13th, December 4th, and January 8th. We've received 33 grant applications this year with a total request for $22,600. And we were able to approve and provide partial funding as to the guidelines to 22 of the applications. And we are in the process of planning an event to honor the grant recipients tentatively on March 20th. And that is open to the public to attend and meet the recipients.
Great, that's a lot of work. That's good. Mr. McLeod.
Eric Van Loon, the Tax Relief Committee solicits voluntary contributions from citizens to help other citizens who are in financial distress to pay their Concord real estate tax bills. I'm very happy to report that the New Hampshire scamming couple did not get any relief from our committee, possibly because they're not Concord property owners, so that made it easier. We work closely with the Hugh Cargill Trust, and this streamlining of the paperwork to make it annual rather than quarterly is helping all the way around. And as with most charitable contributions, the big time is December, and we hope by next month's meeting to have from the town treasurer more final results of how our solicitation letter, which went out last fall, what the results of that is going to be.
Great. Thank you. Does anybody have anything that they missed when we went around the room? Well, thank you all for coming, and we'll see you next at our meeting in February. Thanks for coming.